Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we are going to be letting Calyx Guided by Fate cook. Calyx Guided by Fate is a human druid. It's a 2/2, it's an enchantment creature. It has Constellation, put a counter on target creature. Whenever it or another enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player, it allows you to make a copy of a non-legendary enchantment once a turn. Just to qualify, this ability is once per instance, in case anyone was curious. I looked it up and that seems to be the case. Then we're going to dive right into what this deck kind of would do and how it's going to look. And honestly, I was really impressed. I did a bit of testing with this deck beforehand and I had a wicked good time just playing with it, figuring out what it was going to do. Everything was sweet. Moving into our gameplay, play pattern, game plan, and really what the deck is going to be doing, we need to really give the attention to our commander first because it is a bonus to our strategy. It isn't our whole strategy, but it allows our strategy to go from 0 to 10 very quickly. And I'm talking about in speed, not necessarily in power level, but the speed at which we're able to kind of jump off the line after a commander is in play with just even a little bit of support in the field is crazy. And it allows us to completely take over a game very quickly, especially with multiple opponents. I played a couple games in 1v1 just to test to see kind of like how bad this deck would be. And ended up being able to kill people around turn 4, which was shocking to me. Because again, you only have to commander damage one person out, whereas the other game styles of multiplayer will really be dictated by your ability to kind of lock down specific cards that are going to be annoying to you. Next up, we are going to jump into the MVPs of the deck, or I really call them that. They're just really good cards in 1v1, and the couple games I played in 3-player, weirdly. This ended up being a really strong, really fun group of cards, and I saw them a couple times each, so, I have a little bit of data to back this up, but this is just more my preference, to be honest. There's plenty of cards that could be better in the deck. There's plenty of cards that are just better in general, but I really liked these, and they were very helpful when they showed up, especially kind of on tempo. Number 1, Wild Growth. Being able to ramp freely early, and then also being able to use your commander as a ramp piece with its own trigger is super good. Next is Oppressive Raise. Weirdly, it's a very powerful card. It doesn't really appear to be, and I hadn't really played it since Draft back in the day. Third is Unquestioned Authority. Again, completely unblockable. It does turn off your commander's ability to put counters on itself, but whatever. Sphere of Safety ended up being an actual MVP. It ended up saving me quite a few games when I got out, as I played 5 in total and I saw play in 3 of them. The card is ridiculous, and making copies of it is even more ridiculous. And lastly, but certainly not least, was Anointed Procession. Anointed Procession, in the first game I played of this deck, ended up making some ridiculous number of itself. I think it was somewhere in the thousands or something like that, and my commander was just that big and had unblockable because of Rogue's Passage, so it was really, really good. It ended up being worth the effort to run it into play. Usually I don't like doubling effects, but this one in this deck was particularly powerful. Moving on, we are going to jump into the strengths and weaknesses of the deck, and these bear a little bit more time than maybe the cards I mentioned, because the deck has some real weird strengths and weaknesses, because this is a weird out-of-the-box commander, and it, in my opinion, or at least on EDA Track, it's been kind of flying under the radar, which was shocking to me overall. First off, let's talk about the strengths. This deck is incredibly powerful early, and it just plays like this just insane wave tempo deck where you're just kind of washing everything out of your opponents and just burying them in value. It's super fast at killing people. There are plenty of buff enchantments in the deck and auras that buff your stuff, and your commander anytime you get an enchantment buffs thing. It's just really good at turning people's life totals to 0. It's also super disruptive, so it's very good at making your opponents have to play differently or just fail to be able to play at all. And finally, it's really flexible to shift onto beats without your commander, but it is reliant on beats. That is how you kind of end the game properly. But if you're set up at all, your deck is able to just kind of go, okay, cool, slap an enchantment onto a good creature, and there you go. Next, we need to definitely address the weaknesses this deck has. They are not necessarily plentiful, but they are absolutely very silver bullety. And the first one is how easy our commander is to remove. It's a creature and an enchantment, so that means anything that destroys an artifact or enchantment blows us out with our commander. Anything that does damage to a creature blows us out with our commander. We really need protection in the deck, and the version that I ended up making was built for originally kind of a lower power level, but it ended up really making me realize this commander needs a lot of protection. So being safe and making sure that you're using all the proper ways to keep your commander and the things on it safe or anything like that is very important. There's certainly some ads I would totally recommend, but we can get into those maybe in the comments section. Next up is really, again, how hard it is to win a game after you've been full wiped. That's like a big issue. That's something that happened to me in one of the 5 games that I played with this deck. Someone cast, I think it was Cleansing Nova, and blew me out completely, and that just put me on the back foot for the rest of the game, and it was really hard. I ended up clawing my way back into it, but I don't think I won. But overall, I was really reliant on being able to reset once I had my board wiped, and I was super behind for a long time because of it. Finally, the only recursion stuff we have, because again, our plan is very easy to kind of disrupt, is only targeting our main ways of playing the game, which is enchantments. I didn't run any sort of stuff like Eternal Witness, Noxious Revival, those kind of things, because they're good cards. They're just not necessarily what originally this version of the deck was doing, but I would definitely recommend those cards. Lastly, we're going to take a brief look at win lines and win cons and what that really is going to mean for us. We're going to really briefly look at win lines, basically our routes to victory, and see what kind of directions we're going to have to take in order to properly take a game home. And honestly, it's only one real answer for us in this deck, and that is to hit our opponents and make their life total go to 0, or hit them with our commander and have them hit 21 commander damage. In this deck, it's green-white. I mean, there's not a lot of alternate win-con style play that's really useful or acceptable in these kind of games. And by acceptable, I mean they're just not good if you try and do other things. It's more, these are the best options that we have available to us. One of our best win cons is a card called Ancestral Mask. It is a massive buff to a creature we control. It gives enchanted creature +2/+2 for each other enchantment on the battlefield, and our commander's an enchantment, so it's an automatic +2/+2. And this gets really big really fast, and our commander, being easy to get through with, oftentimes causes us to be able to beat face. Our other win con is a bit of a lock, and it's a very strange one that, in my opinion, is actually just unique to this deck almost entirely, and that is Fall of the Thran. Basically lets us land wipe our opponents, and once we get this engine going, we can really be playing with essentially almost 4 lands every turn, and our opponents will play with none. Like, literally none at all. And we get to play with 4, and that's really going to make us just, go that much farther, and our opponents are going to be stuck at 1 land. And eventually, if this deck gets upgraded to a point where people are really running with it, I'm sure they'd run things that destroy artifacts and enchantments as well, just to be safe. But yeah, this is definitely our best, air quotes, lock piece. So being wise about using it is going to be very important. Anyway, I wanted to thank y'all for joining me this week on Let Him Cook. There is a longer video kind of in the works. I'm still kind of just trying to decide what I want to do with it, but it's coming. It'll be there. Y'all voted. Y'all said yes, so we'll see how it goes, and that's it. Anyway, I wanted to thank y'all so much for tuning in. Have a good one, and feel free to check the links in the description. Pragmatic out.